Hello, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a few moments. So glad to have you here this evening. As we have people entering from the waiting room, we'd love it if you would drop your name, where you're joining from, the name of your local group if you're in one, in the chat. We'd love to see where people are joining us from and who all is here. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're so happy to have you here this evening. We'll get started in just a moment. While we wait for people to enter from the waiting room, please drop where you're joining us from and the name of your local group if you have one. So just to let you know that a capacity for this evening is 500. We do have over 700 people registered. So if at some point you need to leave the meeting, you may not be able to get back in. But don't worry, we will send you the recording afterwards. We will have a follow-up email after all of the forum interviews are completed, and you will have the links in that follow-up email. Seeing people from all over New Jersey, Central, South, the Shore, North, over by Philly. Excellent. Wonderful to see everyone here tonight. Okay, so some logistics before we get started. Closed captioning is available. You can turn it on by clicking on the CC on the bottom of your screen. This call is being recorded. All of the materials will be sent to you following tonight's call. We will be disabling the chat for the interview portion of the call. So please make sure that you're dropping in your comments before that. As a reminder, we are close to capacity, so if you leave, you may not be able to rejoin, but that's okay. You will get the follow-up information and links. Before we begin the interview, I'd like to tell you a little bit about ION. ION stands for Indivisible One New Jersey. That is Indivisible's statewide network representing over 40 active Indivisible groups. We just had another registering today. They keep joining the network. It is fantastic. And we also represent thousands of grassroots activists in New Jersey. We have a new website up and running. And if you're not familiar with me, my name is Marla. I am Indivisible's Senior Regional Organizer for New Jersey. So if you're part of the New Jersey Indivisible Network, you will get to know me through these statewide meetings that we're having. A little bit more about ION. We'll put up the mission statement for ION, but I encourage you to check out that website because it has the mission statement there. We have a lot going on. We do a lot. Some of these strategies that we engage in, we foster connections among indivisible groups in the state on issues of common concern. We work collaboratively to lobby state and federal officials. We participate in electoral work with the aim of supporting more progressive candidates in state and federal elections. We engage in public outreach efforts, such as hosting public forums and working with traditional and social media. Just last Friday, ION representatives met with Senator Cory Booker. We asked him to be bolder in speaking out on behalf of our interests. You may have noticed that he has taken the Senate floor and has been speaking for about 24 hours now. I'm not sure if he's still on the floor or not, but if he's still standing, I'm sure he's still talking on our behalf. So very responsive to what we've been asking him to do. And he has also, as part of that, announced he's fulfilling one of the other commitments he made to us in that meeting we had with him on Friday. He is hosting a town hall, an in-person town hall. We will drop the registration information for that at the end of the call, but that is happening this weekend. So we asked for him to do that by the end of April recess, and he's doing it this weekend already. So wonderful to see that he is stepping up and doing what we've asked of him. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. Andrew is Indivisible's National Advocacy Director.
Thanks, Marla, and hi, folks. I'm Andrew O'Neill. As Marla said, I'm the National Advocacy Director with Indivisible. And this week, I have the great honor of interviewing Ross Baraka, Mikie Sherrill, Sean Spiller, and Steve Fulop, all Democratic candidates for governor of New Jersey. Tonight, we will be hearing from Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill about her candidacy, how she plans to leverage state power to safeguard democracy and act as a counterweight to Trump's agenda should she become the next governor of New Jersey. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone what Marla said, that we will be disabling the chat for distraction-free experience during the interview. We appreciate you understanding. And so get your final greetings and shout outs to Senator Booker in the chat. We will turn that off in 3, 2, 1. All right. Now, without further ado, please welcome Representative Mikie Sherrill. Rep. Sherrill, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I could not be prouder than to be from New Jersey right now, because Cory Booker is doing such an amazing job. So thank you guys for telling him to step up. And boy, did he do it in all possible splendor. And so I think it's so important to see things like this, because I know a lot of people are feeling defeated. I know a lot of people are feeling as if there's no difference to be made, or really oppressed by what's going on in Washington. And I get it. However, I keep saying we have this litigate, legislate, mobilize strategy, and mobilization is key. It was a grassroots organization in the 11th District of New Jersey, NJ11 for Change, who started off in 2018 just by asking their elected official for a town hall, which in a democracy doesn't seem like a lot to ask. And he wouldn't do it. And crowds became greater and greater. And I started to run for Congress, and he decided not to run for Congress because of that mobilization on the ground. So it's so powerful. And to see Cory Booker leading this effort and really being a rallying point for all of us has been so empowering. I've just been incredibly thrilled, and also incredibly worried about him, because that seems like a really hard thing to do, to be there for 24 hours and you can't leave the floor. But so proud to be from New Jersey. I sit here as somebody who has taken numerous oaths to the Constitution. I can't even remember how many. I started when I was a teenager. I was in the Navy for 10 years. I was a federal prosecutor. I've been in Congress, and that is an oath that we know that Trump took at least twice. We know he didn't necessarily do it in his youth with his bone spurs, but he certainly did it when he became president the first and the second time. And now he's just kind of thrown that overboard, as he says that, the 22nd Amendment, I guess, doesn't matter. He maybe didn't think he was taking an oath to that part, and then he's going to run again. And I'll tell you, that wasn't surprising to me, given that he tried not to leave on January 6th the last time. So, it's really disgusting to see, I think, this disregard for our country, for our norms, for the things we care about. And what's as bad is the rollback in the gains that so many of us thought we had made. And we certainly saw this as Roe was overturned. And I saw it again today, because I was down in Washington, because two women who had babies while they were in Congress, one, Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican, and one, Brittany Peterson, a Democrat, had babies in Congress. And they said, look, we think that new mothers should be able to proxy vote, because Brittany had to go there at 4 weeks with her newborn on an important vote. Anna Paulina had missed votes because she had an infection. And, there's not much that members of Congress agree on right now. But I will tell you, so many people agreed with that we had a discharge petition. It's a way to get a vote on the floor when just about everybody agrees that this is a good vote to have. So you have to really show up. We'd all signed the discharge petition. It was to come to the floor, and the speaker said he was going to kill it. The speaker said he wasn't going to do it because he thought it was unconstitutional, despite the fact that he has voted by proxy 40 times plus. So was he, when he took his oath to the Constitution, ignoring it when he was doing what he says he thought was unconstitutional, despite the fact the court said it wasn't? He's done it 40 times. No. What he was trying to do was shut down women in Congress, in my humble opinion. So here's the party that says that they want women having all these babies, but they only want women having babies and then staying home. They don't want women being able to work as they're having children. And that's what I think, as a white Christian nationalist, our speaker was trying to enforce today. So we voted against the rule, and it wasn't even close. And then they just shut down the floor. So basically, this is why you have no way of knowing this, but I'm coming to you from New Jersey, not from Washington, D.C., because votes have been canceled for the rest of the week. Ridiculous. This is where we're at now, attacking women, attacking women's roles in society, attacking everybody's role in society who's not a white Christian nationalist male, from what I can tell. And that's why we're here tonight, because this isn't who we are. This isn't where we want this country to go. This is not what we're going to stand for. And while I know many people feel that kind of sense of being overwhelmed, I am going to tell you that I was just speaking to a woman who said her neighbors in Asbury Park are Republicans. And she said, when I say, well, what do you think about Trump? They go, oh, we'll just have to see, which to her means they're not still very happy with Trump, or they would tell her all about it. It means that my husband, who also went to the Naval Academy, was on a chat group talking about how the Naval Academy is removing about 600 books from Nimitz Library. And I have to tell you guys, I went to the Naval Academy. It's not this font of liberalism, right? It's not as if it has this great department in the library where scholars go to study, you name it, in sort of English and history. I mean, it's where people go to study nuclear physics, right? So they're taking 600 books because I guess they're supposedly DEI. So he wrote to this kind of, he's on this text chain with some people who are somewhat right-wingy. And he said, this is ridiculous. What do you guys think of this? And one guy side texted him and said, this is ridiculous. And I think Jason kind of said, oh, yeah, like it's, great. And he goes, no, I'm a conservative, but this is Stasi level shit. And that's his quote, Stasi level shit. And that's a conservative. So I'm telling you that we are breaking through, that we have a great opportunity here. And we are only going to be able to fulfill it with people like all of you. And the fact that so many of you, to overflow capacity, are here tonight. I'm sure you're going to be here again and again to come up with great ideas, to just help our star of a senator shine with such great wind in his sails. I'm sure he's thinking of you as he's miserable on the floor of the Senate and maybe regretting he listened to you. But we are not, because it is wonderful. And I'm just thrilled beyond belief to see that kind of fervor and fight. And we know that maybe not everybody has it in them, but everybody from New Jersey does. So thank you so much for having me tonight.
Excellent. Well, an excellent lead-in and a good segue into some of the questions we want to get through this evening. We got 5 or 6 topics to touch on. They are based on input from the New Jersey Indivisible movement over the last couple of weeks. And you're going to notice a theme here. You already touched on it, right? But this is an emergency at the federal level, right? Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they are taking over our democracy. They're dismantling federal agencies. He's saying he wants to run for a 3rd term. And as ION said in their meeting with Senator Booker, this can't be business as usual, right? We gotta understand the stakes of this fight and take that on. So I guess just to build off of your introduction, what can New Jersey's elected leaders be doing better to leverage state power and act as that counterweight to the dangerous and destructive policies of the Trump agenda and this administration's flagrant violations of law and the Constitution?
Well, I think we're constantly getting better at this. So, and I say that because there was just a proposal by the governor for another $1 million to the Attorney General's office to hire 10 more prosecutors to prosecute the case against Trump, specifically for that. We have seen our Attorney General bringing case after case after case. And it's not just our Attorney General, Matt Placken, alone. He is working with other Democratic attorneys general across the country, which makes it even more powerful. We are starting to see the mobilization of some law firms and colleges and universities standing against Trump. I think that's really important. I have seen this. Guys, I just watched in 2018, and really, if Republicans had done this better, I probably wouldn't even be in Congress. If people like Representative Frelinghuysen and Charlie Dent and Frank Lobiondo, just different people who would have said in a different time they were Rockefeller Republicans or something. If they had just stood up against Trump together and stopped some of this MAGA these horrible things that are against our values here, I think we could have seen a different outcome. But instead, people are being picked off one by one by one until when they finally are ready to gather, it's too late. And I just see that again and again. So picking off these law firms, and I think, what can our state legislators do? What can New Jersey do? Support those law firms. Give those law firms business that are standing against Trump. Look at like Jenner and Block, who's saying, no, we're going to court on this. We can do more as a state, I think, to support those people who are standing against. Saying to, early on, some of our, Pell Grant universities, et cetera, were making decisions on moving affinity groups because they were afraid to lose federal funding. And they were really struggling. I was speaking to one president who was really struggling because their mission as a university was diversity, and yet they were shutting down these affinity groups because they were afraid of federal funding. So I think we're seeing in some cases what students are doing is holding those meetings off campus. So finding another way to hold affinity groups. So providing other opportunities where we are continuing to double down on our values. We are not going to let these schools go under. The tough part is, and the reason we have sympathy, this funding is huge, right? So when people say, oh, what are you going to do about Medicaid or Social Security? We're talking about up to half the state's budget. So how do we continue to promote our values, stand against this administration, and still get those federal dollars in? I personally think we've got to find some ways to claw back federal funding and keep it here in the state and embargo it. And I think that's court decisions that we have to do to stop sending all our federal money to the federal government. If they are not going to fund the programs they're responsible for, we'll do it. We're a net donor state. However, in the meantime, I think figuring out ways to continue to sort these missions of diversity, making sure we are getting everybody an opportunity, and standing against this nonsense. And I'll just say it truly, for those of you who are having a wait and see approach, don't wait, you've seen, right? It's happening. It's happening. They are going against women. They are going against people of color. I'll just tell you, as somebody who served, the two of the people they immediately fired were our Admiral C.Q. Brown, who is the Black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General C.Q. Brown, and then Admiral Franchetti, who is the first female chief of naval operations, gone because one was Black and one was a woman. So it's here.
It absolutely is here. And next couple questions, we're going to get into a couple specific ways that this administration and the GOP agenda is posing a severe risk to New Jerseyans. I do want to acknowledge before we get to the next question, I think during that answer, we officially crossed over Senator Booker as now the record holder for longest speech in Senate history. I'll just say I'm very proud that it is someone making a defense of our democracy rather than the previous record holder, Strom Thurmond, who was attacking civil rights legislation. So I associate myself with all of the celebration emojis in the chat there.
Yeah, I love this so much. I'm so glad I was with you guys for this. This is a good moment. This is you don't have a lot of good moments. Actually, this is my second good moment. The first was when that rule went down today on the House.
That was pretty good too.
And it was a little bit of a what to the House Speaker. So I was quite pleased. But it doesn't compare to this. Wow, that's great news.
Great. Okay. On to our next question. So yesterday was Trans Day of Visibility, and with a presidential administration determined to restrict access to trans healthcare, punish those who provide it, it's critical that New Jersey codify protections for medically necessary and life-saving care. Currently, gender-affirming care is protected in New Jersey by executive order, which is great, but not law, which would be better. So efforts are underway in the state legislature to remedy this. Relatedly, the reversal of Roe v. Wade has caused many of us to consider what's needed to meet this moment and ensure not only the right to an abortion, but that people who seek reproductive care in New Jersey and everywhere are able to do so safely and with dignity. So, as governor, if the reproductive freedom and health equity bill package that is currently being considered by the state legislature was brought to your desk, would you sign it? Why or why not? And anything else that you'd like to share on that topic?
I would sign it, but I wouldn't only just wait around until it comes to my desk. I've been advocating strongly for it. So I would really be pushing the legislature to pass this if they don't already. I'm hoping, should I become the next governor of New Jersey, that will already be the law of the land, because I think it is important that we work to pass that before the next inauguration. Because look, I feel great. I think I have a good shot at the primary. I think I can win the general, et cetera, et cetera. I don't take anything for granted. It is a weird world, and we need this law in place before the next person gets sworn in. In the event it is not a Democrat, we just need to protect everybody. And we can't, in too many cases, I have been really frustrated because in too many cases, I think there has been this protect what we have and be in a defensive way and not go on the offense to protect rights and freedoms. And so for years, we're like holding, trying to protect these dwindling rights and freedoms. So whether it's voting rights or reproductive rights or, you kind of name it, it feels like some of those rights had been eroding for years. And instead of going on the offense, and I was pushing some of our groups to do this, oh no, we want to make sure we don't mess up court cases or we don't do this. And I would say that's why I think we need a constitutional amendment to protect abortion. And I know the ACLU is on the other side. Oh, we've got good law. We've got, good court decisions. It's better than anything you could do. Well, guess who appoints the judges in New Jersey? The governor. So guess how quickly that good law could erode. We've seen what's going on at the federal level. We've seen what an unchecked executive can do. And why would we risk that in our state? Now, I will say it is very expensive. To do this right, you have to really do you have to make sure you get the right law, because any language you use that is incorrect, the Republicans will come after it and make it sound like you're trying to do, what does Trump say, post-birth abortions or some weird stuff. So you have to do it really well. You have to spend a lot of money on it. So I get that. But I do think this is really important. I think constitutional protections for abortion, we should not rest on our laurels anywhere. We have seen that courts can roll back these protections. You need constitutional amendments for them. I also think we should stockpile mifepristone here in this state. I know my friend Maura Healey in Massachusetts is doing just that. I know our governor suggested we should be stockpiling that. We need better shield laws. We have some, New York has better. We should just, if there's somebody that has a better law than us when it comes to, these rights and freedoms being protected, we should just, let's just go match them, because we are seeing it across the country, these rollbacks. And here's what I just want to kind of leave in a lot of people's heads. I think Democrats have taken the wrong message from the last election. I think we all have to get really good at this. And I think why I say we've taken the wrong message is because a lot of people think we've lost on the trans issue, and this is an issue that we need to back away from. I think that's not true at all. I think our problem is we can't take the bait every time Republicans raise anything. We can win on these issues. We need to talk about protecting privacy. We need to talk about insurance rights. We need to talk about medical rights. These are key things to people, and we should legislate on them so we can say, this is where we stand. We know who plays on sports teams is complicated. And we know that, under a certain age, we want our kids off the screens, all of our kids, and on the field. We know that there's a body that decides who plays sports in New Jersey. And guess what? I think they've been doing it since 2008. Nobody even notices because it's fine. They can make these decisions. They've got experts. You can take them to court. It seems to go, I can't speak for it because I don't know much about it, because nobody talks about it, because it's going fine. And they can determine, at what point. And I think they have rules like, okay, you can't change mid-season. You have to be here, and they can talk about it. But look, what we need to be talking about, what we haven't accomplished here, is basic privacy rights so that if you travel to another state, you're protected. We haven't passed legislation to make sure your insurance company pays for your care. We haven't made sure parents have access to care and children have access to care that is medically necessary, as any pediatrician will tell you. We haven't done the basic work. So why we're, kind of going on to tier 2, as transparents will tell you, like we need to start with tier 1, like these are the basic protections people need. I think we have really done everyone a disservice here. So we have not gotten the basic protections passed, and we are walking away from this because we act like it's so bad. I think it's because we just need to show people where we stand, and where we stand is largely where most Americans stand. I think people are a lot kinder on this issue than we give them credit for, because I think if just say, look, this is about, if you're a parent and your child's suffering, you want to have the capacity to make decisions with your doctor. And we've seen it again and again. People get that. So that's my soapbox. Sorry about that, but that's a really long way of saying I'm a really big proponent of the Repro Act.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Next question is about another population that the Trump administration is, of course, targeting for attack. The administration has begun aggressively detaining immigrant asylum seekers, green card holders, other legal residents for the crime of exercising their rights or even just having a tattoo, I guess. They're reportedly being sent to jails out of state or out of the country entirely with no oversight, no due process. That appears to be the point. Little to no contact with their lawyers, no clear process for reuniting them with their loved ones, of course. As governor, what will you do to protect New Jerseyans against these politically motivated immigration detention and deportations from the current administration?
When you're picking people up off the street without charges and putting them in a detention facility where people don't have access, without a clear understanding of how long they're going to be held or what the plan is here, every single person in this country should feel endangered. I have served in countries where because this is the first set of how this happens. This goes to then picking people up off the street who speak against Trump, for example, citizens. This is just where it starts. This isn't where it finishes. And so I think every single person should be just appalled at what's going on. The videos of the woman at Tufts being picked up. And it is, I think as people can see, it's ratcheting up. It starts with, maybe some complaint that there might have been some some vague charge that they couldn't enunciate and changed on the fly, by the way, when asked. And explain that the initial gentleman had a green card and they were like, oh, well, then it's because of this or something. So they're changing, but then it's getting crazier and crazier, the lack of any reason for picking someone up. And one person I think they recently picked up, I don't think they weren't an activist, they were nothing. So I'm not even sure what they did to piss off the administration. So this is where we're getting to, right? Just people being grabbed, no charges. This is why we have charges. This is why we have due process. This is why we have a constitution. And again, I would suggest that anyone who is not a white male Christian nationalist should be pretty much a promoter of the Constitution of the United States and very concerned about exactly what's happening now. This is, to quote that guy on my husband's text chain, this is some Stasi level shit that's going on right now, and everyone should be very concerned about it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I know has been under discussion in New Jersey as part of a response to this is the Immigrant Trust Act. So for New Jersey to be a fair and welcoming state, New Jerseyans should be able to support their families and fully participate in their communities without fear of deportation. And this is one way that the state can, be supportive of that vision. If that bill was brought to your desk as governor, would you sign the Immigrant Trust Act into law, and why not?
Yeah, so if I was already governor, I would have to see what it looks like, because I will tell you the executive orders actually have passed muster of the courts by a Trump appointed judge. I have encouraged the legislature to consider passing the exact same language so that so it's not in peril in the court. So a court can't take it down because they've already found in favor and found it met muster. So I would have to see what the legislation looks like, given that right now the protections are pretty strong. And given that I would have some time, hopefully it's for at least 4 years, maybe 8, to make sure we have the EO, and then what do we want to do through the assembly? What I think is critically important right now, and I'm hearing concerns in the community, because I just sat with some people in the Dominican community talking about this. I've told people to alert me if ICE agents go into schools, but people are seeing ICE agents around schools, which is very dangerous. This is also shutting down kind of free association. People are afraid to go into parades or something like that, and even afraid to have some of these parades and stuff, worried that people might be put in danger. I'll tell you as somebody, so it is really dangerous if you have a community of people that are afraid of law enforcement. So I think it's really important that New Jersey set a separate group, like saying, look, law enforcement is here to help you. We're protect and serve. People in these uniforms, New Jersey uniforms, protect and serve. If you have a domestic violence problem, if you are getting carjacked, if you are, you name it, you can go to these people. There has to be this separation, or it makes our communities really, really unsafe. And I'll tell you, I was just speaking to somebody who is a New Jersey policeman, and they just don't even know at this point I'm sorry, I misspoke. He was actually with Homeland Security, so federal agent, who was saying it's just really unclear what they're supposed to even do. So I don't think our federal agents have a really good sense of what their responsibilities are. And that takes a lot of training to make sure, people who are enforcing the law understand the constitutional requirements of doing that and what they can and can't do. And now it feels like it's a pretty gray area in a really dangerous way.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks for pointing out a couple of things that Indivisible has been particularly paying attention to, the revocation of the sensitive locations memo, and the fact that ICE is doing activity around schools or vaccination sites. I know is an area that obviously is very eroding for trust. So thank you for mentioning those things in particular. I promise we'll get to some bright forward-looking things in a minute. But of course, as we stated, it is an emergency, and so got a few other topics to cover related to the current actions of the administration. So Donald Trump, his chief donor, maybe boss, Elon Musk, and congressional Republicans they're gutting services, right? They're raising prices. They're racing towards slashing Medicaid and Social Security and more, with more than $27.5 billion in federal funds flowing through the current New Jersey state budget. Any of these actions would impact the state budget, right? And how the state meets its residents' needs, provides funding for programs already on the books, particularly for vulnerable populations. What do you propose to do to mitigate the harms that Trump actions could have on the state budget and ensure that every resident can afford to thrive in New Jersey?
So at the beginning, I just put forth some legislation that I think must need to be drug tested like other federal agents. And
I'd be interested.
And the problem really quickly. But nevertheless, I think what we're facing is twofold, right? We have the problems with what he's doing that is imperiling federal funding for our state for the most vulnerable people. So we are seeing this attempt by Trump to enrich himself by taking down many of the programs that help poor and vulnerable people. So as we say, the richest man in the world trying to make more money off the backs of some of the most vulnerable people and poorest people. And so he's doing that. He's trying to implement these. He's like getting rid of some of the oversight organizations like the National Labor Board, because they have some cases against him because he's been treating his employees poorly. And so he's trying to just get rid of them so he can continue to do that and not pay any fines. He was trying to get the State Department to buy all these cyber trucks that they didn't need, which didn't seem like government efficiency, but just seemed like a means of enriching Elon Musk. That was shut down once it was realized. I think he's trying to take down a contract that Verizon has so he can, it's like, I think it's over $1 billion, so he can replace it with Starlink, his company. So he's really just using his position as somebody who's paid off Trump through paying a ton of money to his campaign so that he can enrich himself even more. And then it gets worse because he's inside Treasury and we don't know what he's doing with that data. There's a lot of privacy data. And he seems like he's a Nazi because he's given the Hail Hitler sign. So, I mean, do you want that person in your personal data? I do not. I have no idea what the plan is. And it's very, very concerning. And I don't think his loyalty is to the United States or to our ideals or values. So that's a problem. On the other side, you have this problem of the federal funding and what we're going to do in the state to deal with it. So, it's not as easy as just saying, oh, we're going to, cut a couple buses and make up SNAP funding. We're talking with all these cuts about half our state budget, possibly billions and billions of dollars. So we will have to see what actually happens. I was saying to these Republicans in Washington, and I don't think they were really agreeing with me, but it had to be said. I said, say what you will about Trump, if you like him or not, let's take our personal feelings out of this. If you just want to do productive things in government, you can't with him in office because he's just chaos incarnate. He says he's going to do these horrible things and then everybody gets mad. So then he says he's not going to do them, but then he kind of half-ass implements them. But then some of the stuff he's not even actually implementing, people are not doing because they're afraid he's implementing it. So they're afraid to hire new people to help people because he might implement it. It's just like this disaster all around. So my gut is DOGE is going to end up costing us a lot of money. Ironically, as they're supposed to be savings. The only person that's going to find a lot of savings is probably Elon Musk because he's getting rid of all oversight, which would have cost him money for all the, workers that he's not treating correctly. So I think it's going to cost us money because he's taking down all these programs and organizations. And, when you do that, you think, oh, just start them up again and just start paying again. It's not like that, right? It's not like you stop a program and you're paying $100 that day, and then you stop it for a couple of days, and then you start it again and pay $100 that day, right? All the people have been fired. The organizations have been dismantled. Finding new people, bringing new organizations, and restarting the whole thing costs money. And so I think it's going to end up costing us money. I think on the state side, what we have to do is see what actually happens. We have to push as hard as we can against Republicans and mobilize as much as we can so they don't make some of the deep cuts they've proposed, like Medicaid. We need to keep holding them responsible for Social Security and keep pushing so that there aren't enough people to pass this, that the members of Congress who I haven't seen a lot of profiles in courage, but they seem to be really courageous when it comes to preserving their own seat in Congress. So maybe they will see the blue wave coming and then grow a backbone and, really advocate against it. Once we do see what's coming, we just really have to find the means of protecting the most vulnerable. And that's often, to me, kids. Are kids getting meals? Are people getting food? I mean, there's just no way in the richest country in the world, people should not be getting food. And we just have to sort of start with the basic things, food and shelter, and build on out from that. But I think we're going to have to take stock of what's actually happening, who the most vulnerable people are, and how we're going to protect them as we kind of weather this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you separating out, the DOGE threats and then also the legislative threats, which, of course, that's kind of their strategy, right? Is flood the zone with all of this stuff. Yeah. The attacks are coming from everywhere. Yet another topic under attack. Let's talk about our democracy. So, New Jersey has, unfortunately, some I guess we'll call it a checkered history with some corruption issues, some non-competitive elections, ballots that didn't treat all candidates equally. And while New Jersey has made significant strides towards eliminating the county line and having fair block primary ballots, Concerns remain about whether political bosses will find new ways to ensure preferred candidates win and prevent fair and competitive seats and representatives that are responsive to the constituents electing them. So what will you do as governor to ensure that elected officials in New Jersey are accountable to their voters and that there's an equal playing field for all candidates?
Yeah, I do think a lot of it is ballot access. I think getting rid of the lines has created an openness in the system. I think that's why we see so many Democratic candidates. And I will tell you, not all, but most of the county conventions I participated in were secret ballot. And that was very new and very different for several of the counties I participated in. And I will say it was one of those things where to earn, so it was very different from just being given the line in certain places, to earn the endorsement of a county that does secret ballot. And, a lot of these counties have about 600 municipal chairs. So these are active members who do vote by mail, who do phone banking, who do canvassing. You have to do a lot of on the ground work. You have to hold meet and greets. You have to talk to people. You have to hear from people. So it can be, I think, and, if people disagree in the state, I'm happy to hear that too. If people still think there are problems, and there are in certain places, but I do think in many ways it is the start of getting in front of people, the start of grassroots organizing. It's a good organizing principle because you start these things, you start some of these meet and greets for the county conventions. And these are just like, I'm going in a local diner and I'm talking to, 50 people, or I'm going in somebody's living room and I'm talking to these people. And a lot of the people that come aren't even in the county committee. They just are neighbors and friends and stuff. So, to get people to come listen to you in January, it's a kind of nice organizing principle. We're doing it because the county convention, what have you. But I do think having those secret ballots has made a difference. I would also say that office block ballots are important. I think we can move towards randomized name selection on the ballots. I think same day registration is important. And then just automatic vote by mail. And then instead of an opting in, opting out of vote by mail, I think would make more people vote. And just because I'll really be interested as we go forward, because we've seen more and more vote by mails, at what that does to turnout. If we see, if it's on your kitchen table for a minute, maybe you vote it, that's great. Maybe you think about it, and maybe you don't vote because you're not very well informed, but maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to go online this morning and figure it out, and just kind of at my kitchen table with my coffee vote. So I'm hoping that makes a difference. But I'd like to see how we just create access. And this is the one area where I actually, despite our maybe state's checkered history, it actually feels good in the states that want to increase voter access, because you can. It's horrible federally, because federally we've seen all these rollbacks. And I can tell you, I've done voter protection at a law firm I was at when I first got out of law school. I did a lot of, election day voter protection. And, from my experience, Shelby County, Tennessee is not, a place you want to rely on open voting. I was getting calls all night from them one presidential election. But I will say that as a state, we can make these changes. And I think under this administration, we've seen very rapid movement. I mean, the way people vote now is very different from the way people were voting in 2016. I remember when I first said, I'm going to register a lot of people to vote by mail. I think that's the best way we can do it to get people access. And somebody said, Mikie, please don't do that. And I said, why? And they said, everybody who tries to do a vote by mail program goes to jail. And I said, why? And I said, I think we can do it the right way. And so here I am, ethically signing people up to vote by mail.
Well, that's a good segue into my follow-up on ballot access. 23 states and the District of Columbia have implemented same-day voter registration. So any qualified resident of the state can register to vote and cast a ballot at the same time on election day or early, wherever they're doing it. I can say I've done that myself in multiple jurisdictions. It's really convenient. It's great. Strong proponent. Meanwhile, the voter registration deadline in New Jersey is 21 days before election day, which I don't know how far in advance you can typically plan. I don't know what I'm going to eat for dinner tomorrow. So thinking, 3 weeks ahead, sometimes a challenge. And in particular, disenfranchises, vulnerable populations, young voters, et cetera. Would you support New Jersey joining these 23 states and DC in adopting same-day voter registration?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. I meant to, but yes, I'm a proponent of that. And especially, we're in a tri-state area. We're in a place where, you might, people from New York or Connecticut or Pennsylvania might move here. So, what do you do then? You get stuck and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not a fan of being able to just change, or I think I would keep the rules around being registered as a Republican or Democrat, because I don't want Republicans messing around in our election, same day voter change. Maybe I'm not so far, but same day voter registration, 100%. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'll close on this one. You mentioned that it's great that we have, practically at capacity meeting here, right, on a Tuesday of grassroots folks who are engaged. They want to plug in. They want to hear from the candidates for governor. One thing that Indivisible really values is having open and ongoing relationships with our elected officials. Right, it doesn't start and end during the campaign cycle. It's year round, right? We want to work with our elected officials while they're in office as well. So if you are elected governor, what would you do to cultivate a relationship with grassroots activists and community organizations throughout the state?
Yeah, that's always been really important to me. I've often been in the delegation, the biggest Democratic vote getter, I think, in all but the totally vote by mail election, where I think Donald Norcross beat me. But otherwise, I always I overperform the top of the ticket. I get out the most votes. And I do that despite the fact that I'm not even in the top 6 most Democratic districts in Congress. So to get that kind of vote out, it's just a lot of engagement with grassroots groups, a lot of town halls, a lot of meet and greets, a lot of just being in the district, just being at events, being at Bottle Hill Day, or being, just kind of out in the community at different events, delivering big checks. That's my favorite thing to do. I used to say it was too cheesy and I would never do it. Now I'm always doing it because I'm it gets people out. I'm like, come on, guys. So really a lot of voter engagement, a lot of delivering for people, because I always say that the best work that I do as an elected official is when I listen to the people I serve. And it's not, I just listen to them and I go back to my ivory tower in Washington and write legislation and, do great things. We write the legislation. We go back to the people who've asked for it and say, is this what you're envisioning? And sometimes they're like, yep, that's it. And sometimes, they say, Mikey, no, this isn't, what this would do is X and what we want is Y. So it's not a one-off, it's a relationship, it's a back and forth. And then we hear how's that working? How's everything going and stuff. So that's a really key pillar of, I think, public service. And so I love that that's a key pillar of Indivisible.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Well, we got through all of our questions. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you on this auspicious evening for New Jerseyans. Appreciate sharing that moment with us. Everyone, thank you to Congresswoman Sherrill for sharing her time and engaging with us this evening. Marla, handing the mic back to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mikey, both for your time. I also want to thank the ION Candidate Evaluation Committee for coordinating this forum and helping to cultivate all of the questions from our grassroots audience. I want to thank all of our attendees for tuning in. I also want to make sure that you are signed up for our upcoming interviews. We have 2 more happening this week. You can sign up at the link that is on your screen. It's also being dropped into the chat for you. Following our week-long candidate forum. Next week, we are also hosting a statewide ION meeting. This is open to indivisibles from across New Jersey. During this meeting, we will discuss the race for governor. We will talk about your feedback on the candidates and ways to engage in the primary. That is actually the same link. That page has the registration for that meeting at the bottom of it. And also, this would not be an Indivisible meeting if we didn't have a call to action for you. So please, please, please make sure that you are signed up for a hands-off event happening this weekend. We have anchor events happening in New York and Philly. We also have a number of different events happening in the state of New Jersey. So please make sure that you are participating in those events. If you can't make it out, that's fine. Make sure you're paying attention online and amplifying the messaging that you're seeing with the hashtag hands off. And finally, new information tonight for you. We also want to make sure that you have the sign-up information for Senator Booker's town hall that he just announced during his record-breaking historic speech on the Senate floor this evening, or the past 24 plus hours. So that information for the town hall is dropped in the chat for you as well. Please make sure that you keep an eye out for the follow-up email. That will contain all of the links from all of the recordings, all the links that we've shared on the call tonight, and more. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Have a great night.